under that still.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of a Thinking Man's podcast, but I'm not sure if that's what this segment is. This is just me and my good friend, IFBB Pro, newly crowned North America's overall champion, Shannon Seeley. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, T. I'm so stoked to be here.
Shannon and I go way back. I've known Shannon since 2016, maybe 2015. I think we met at Junior Nationals in 2016. So we previously worked with the same coach. She's in Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan. So kept in touch all these years, both been grinding in this bodybuilding game. So first and foremost, congratulations on the overall women's physique champion, North Americans. I know as well as anyone how many years you were at it, how long you put into it. So it was very cool for me to see you get that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So before we dive into that, give everybody a little backstory. How long have you been competing?
I did my first show in 2014. So it's almost been a decade now since I've been competing. I was training a little bit before that. Gosh, I don't know. I think I had on my Instagram, I think I've done like 21 national shows. I mean, it's been a learning experience for me to just go through this journey, and it's just, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, awesome finally getting to achieve that pro status that we all chase so vicariously for, however long it takes for, with you and I and our mindsets. I mean, whatever it takes to get where we want to be, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, so 21 pro qualifiers.
Gosh, I think it was 21 shows. I think I did a total of 7 pro qualifiers, 21 shows total in that span. And I also had my daughter in that span as well. So
right. So you didn't even compete for a year, right?
I didn't compete for a year. I literally got pregnant coming off my last. I got pregnant like literally like 2 months after my show. And then had her, and then what I ended up doing is still dieting down because I had photo shoots. So I still did a cutting diet right after my pregnancy. I just wasn't allowed to compete. My coach said no, give your hormones a little reset.
Okay, so yeah, and I mean, your transformation from postpartum to where you got to shortly after, I mean, that would be good for any mothers or anybody who's had a kid. Shannon also coaches, and she can guide you through that process probably better than anyone. It was the most insane transformations I've ever seen. How quick were you back to training after you had your baby?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah, you guys, please don't listen to that because your doctor would not advise you. And then I literally trained the day I went to labor, and then 3 days post, I went back. I did not follow my doctor's protocols, and please follow your doctor's protocols if you're not conditioned like I was. But I had to.
And then how late into the pregnancy did you keep training?
All the way up. I literally trained until the day I went to labor, and then I actually started dieting post-pregnancy when I was 34 weeks pregnant. I didn't even have my daughter yet. And my doctor was like, just full term, like you can start cutting your nutrition down if you want to. And I did.
That's intense. I remember watching it. It was I mean, I love hardcore, so I'm a fan of it. But yeah, anybody listening, listen to your doctors.
Yeah, do not listen or follow my protocol. It's just and I mean, my background, most people do, but I had an eating disorder prior to bodybuilding, so I have really bad body dysmorphia. I want my body a certain way. So and I know if I let it go and I get lazy and I just see the fat accumulating, it triggers me back into bad habits. So
yeah, we'll get into that because I think it highlights your personality. You're just extreme, is what it takes to become a championship bodybuilder. I mean, 21 shows, 7 pro qualifiers. I like to point that out. We just had Chris Santa Maria on, who's done 31 shows and got his pro card at the same North Americans you did at his 17th pro qualifier. So it's like 22 years.
Yeah.
This takes time for most people. I think a lot of younger people come in today and it's like, hey, I want to do my first show and I'd like to turn pro. And it's like, that's okay to have that as a large goal. But like we've preached on this podcast numerous times, like you have to have a realistic, like the goal for your first show is just to do the first show, get through the prep, bring your best condition you can at that time of your career. But this idea that like it's just going to go boom, 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 turn pro within, a few years is like, unless you're Derek Lunsford or somebody really, really good, probably not going to happen that way for you. So you're going to have to learn to love the process, which is what we're going to dive into. So last year you did how many years in a row have you done North Americans?
I did North Americans 3 years in a row. So 2021, 2022, and 2023.
And what were the results 2021 and 2022?
2021, I placed sixth. 2022, I placed second. And then overall in this current one.
And you had done Junior USAs as well, right?
I did Junior USAs.
Took second there in your class, I believe.
I took second. I've done Junior USAs twice. I did second the first time around, and then I did third the second time around. And then I've done Junior Nationals.
Yeah, so you've been everywhere. As far as this year's prep, 2023. First of all, what was your mindset taking second in 2022, getting off the stage? Walk me through it.
So it was really okay. So I'll say this: like I went into that prep. That was the first full prep on season and off season I had with my new coach. So he knew my goals. He had worked with me for about entire off season, so he was kind of learning how my body responded. And we were really, I'm one of those that some people don't, but regardless of where I place, if I don't place one first, but I'm in the top 10, I like to get the judges' feedback. So we had the judges' feedback, followed it to a T for that prep. And I will say for the last prep when I placed second, I walked in there thinking I had it in the bag. I was really, I wouldn't say cocky, but I was like, this is my time. I did everything that I needed to do with the judges. And so when I stepped on, we were dead center. There were 6 of us in first calls, and me and the girl were literally split dead center, the one that placed first. And even after first or prejudging, everyone's like, oh, you have this. And I personally, and I still let it get to me, but I try to go into every show without any expectations. And I will say that was one of my faults. I went into this show and I've never done that before. In 2022, I went in with expectations. This is my year to go pro. And so I think it was even more devastating when they didn't call me to go pro, because in my expectations, I was already in my head, I'm like, I have to be pro. I got this. So when I got off stage, I did cry behind the scenes, not gonna lie, it stung because it was a huge blow. But also rightfully so. Okay, we always, I can always criticize, oh, it's politics bullshit. I looked at the side by sides. She rightfully won, and rightfully so. And that was one thing that we went back to the drawing board. I got the judges' feedback, and I thought that I had that fire fueled for that prep. Oh gosh, no, the mindset that I have for 2023 to 2022 was night and day difference. You are always in my head for preps, and I think it's because you have that stoicism, you have that stoic mindset. And in my head, I always am like, okay. And I think about the way that you teach people to train with the intensity. I'm telling you, T, you were in the back of my head for training all the time. Like, okay, I can do more reps. If T was here and he's holding a gun in my head, would I be able to do another set? I literally had that mindset for my entire training, even if I didn't have the strength to do it. And I think just that blow just reignited something that I was just missing for so long. Going back a little bit though, and I remember this prep, and I know you did too, because 2020 was the one that kind of set me out of my mindset, because I prepped for 9 months during COVID, which was the stupidest thing I think anybody would do. And I remember having conversations with you during this, and I know you do too, because I was on 3 hours of cardio, and you're like, Shannon, you got to stop the show. Like, you are done. You remember that. Like, it was miserable, but I think doing that show and doing that all the way where I ended up stepping on stage and looking the absolute worst I ever did, because I just was like, nope, I'm still going to do it. I'm going to show everyone, like, I can just push through this. And it made my health it messed up my hormones and health so bad that even through 2021 into 2022, I was still battling my hormone, and that horrible prep that I had to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2020 messed a lot of people up.
Yeah.
Luckily, I made the decision early to call my prep and just start growing again because of the uncertainty of the year with the shows. So I do remember talking. You actually reminded me of that. That was, yeah, that was a hell of a year for bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So 20, so take me to, so you have a good off season coming out of the 2022 second place.
Yep.
And I mean, I've never been second place at a pro qualifier. I've gotten second places at other shows, and I know how second place feels. It's worse than third. It's worse than last, because last it's like, wow, I have a lot of work to do. That's easy. I'll just focus on the work. But if it's like second, it could be a matter of like, was my suit off? Was my posing a little worse? Was my tan worse than the person that, like, it could be something minute that was in your control that you dropped the ball on, and then you have to like assess and live with that the whole next year. So but it sounds like you used it as fuel. You were able to be, objective with the pictures and be like, I had work to do. So what type of environment did that create for your off season? So take me to off season first. How did you guys progress out of your prep?
So off season, when I went into off season, that was when I made the full decision that this entire prep for 2023, starting an off season into the prep season, I was gonna control everything that I put in my mouth and how it was processed. And that's when my husband and I made the decision to fully grow our own poultry, fully produce our own protein, grains, everything. So I had complete control over what was put in my food. So there was literally no bullshit fillers in any of the food that I consumed. Obviously, the protein supplements I have some fillers and additives, but if I can control the most wholesome, nutrient dense food, that was the biggest thing I first started. And it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I have a full garden. You have to, that on top of the prep, you're making sure that the quality of the food, you're not using fertilizers, you're doing all that stuff. And then what I also did, and I've never done this for any other prep, is I was super mindful and super routine with my recovery. My entire off season, I did different recovery methods every so often. My first 2 months of off season, I was doing yoga 5 days a week. I was doing 20 to 30 minutes of yoga. It wasn't anything intense, but it would be like just making sure my hip flexors, my mobility. It would be 20 to 30 minutes. I did that for the first 2 months, and then I dropped yoga down to 3 times a week, and I started implementing more deep tissue massages. And then I was doing compression and cryotherapy chambers. And so I literally maneuvered these all the way into my prep, where I was doing dry needling in the E-stim, and that was the first time that I added it as like an additional workout. Like recovery was part of my program, and I never had done it so routinely. And it made a huge difference with the way that I trained, even my posing, because not everything was so jammed up. I just felt like it was a really good decision for me to make because I'd never done it that routinely before. And I'm telling everyone now, like, I feel like that made the huge night and day difference. My muscles weren't so bound up. Everything was a little bit more flexible. I even measured in height wise a 1/4 inch taller than I did. And I think it has a lot to do with the decompression of the spine when I was doing yoga. So I tell people now, like, even if you stretching is tedious, but it freaking works.
Yeah. No, I've been on the recovery game since 2018, and I can honestly say I wouldn't be training the way I do without it. Like, I
Yeah.
have a team of people out here, a physical therapist, a body work. I don't even know what her title is, but I literally just came from her to jump on here with you. So that, and then my training partner actually has piqued my interest about doing yoga because he does it 4 times a week. And I think bodybuilders could probably all use a little more flexibility and pliability of the muscles. So
Yeah, it's very humbling. I'll tell you that. It's very, very humbling when you're doing yoga.
oh, I I already know I would be humbled in less than a minute. So this farm thing, I don't think people realize so how many, name all the animals you have on your farm.
So currently we do egg layer chickens and meat chickens. So I have upward of 100, 150 chickens at a time. We do ducks, and I also raise emus. And then we go back and forth with meat rabbits. I have bees, and then I also have a 2,500 square foot garden that I grow all of my vegetables based on my vegetables and my fruits, basically that I'm going to use for my prep. And then it's a thing. Like I already am planting my garden for next year. I start my seeds in my basement in my greenhouse, and it is a constant additional job, basically.
On top of you're a full-time personal trainer and online coach, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So do you think having to manage the farm and all the things that come with it was a positive distraction in prep because you don't have time to focus on prep other than just doing what you need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved having the farm, especially because I've always prepped the same where I usually prep through the summers. And then I know my winters fall into my off season. And it's great for me because I'm outside. I don't have the distractions to think about food. If I'm in the garden and I want to eat a green bean, it's not going to throw my prep off. Um, and it really helps me just stay grounded mentally. I will say the only downfall that we did discover with this going into this prep and doing this prep season is farm chores take a lot of energy out of you. So as I was getting down into really hard deficit and really depletion mode, I did have to take off, or my husband had to take a lot more of the farm chores because I was just burning too many calories, doing stuff where I really just had to be off my feet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, especially with your amount of muscle and metabolism at that point of a prep is you would need to be checking in daily and needing a lot more frequent refeeds, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
And that's what we did. I mean, my North Americans was the first week in September. We did daily check-ins starting in July because Nelson knew it was my full, it was my full farm season.
right. So that's again, we're working with a coach more than just for the prep season. We have a lot of younger listeners on this podcast, so I like to teach when we can of like there's value to staying with a coach continuously,
Yes.
off season to prep, back to off season, back to the next prep. I think a lot of people are so quick to do a prep with a coach, maybe not like their placing that they got, blame it on the coach, and then go jump somewhere else, and then just
Yeah.
keep the
And
process going. And it's like, you and I have both worked with multiple coaches at this point, but we've stayed with each coach for multiple prep seasons.
yeah. And the reason too is I see people that, like you said, they drop coaches left and right. I always, when I go into a coach, I know that usually the first year with a coach is not always going to be your perfect year because your coach is still learning how your body responds to peaks and hormones. And, if you're doing TRT, if you're not, how you train, they're still trying to get to know your body. And I mean, that's the biggest struggle. That's the biggest struggle for a lot of people is they just want those quick results. So when they place poorly, well, were you with your coach for a full season? Did they only get you, 8 weeks out from nationals where they're just prepping you and just trying to help you get what they can. So
Right.
I think it's one of those things. It's that gratification, that instant gratification where it's like, no, this is an entire learning thing for you and your coach. You have to mesh well with your coach and learn to communicate too. I'm sure you've had clients like I have where the lack of communication makes it extremely hard to do your job properly. If someone's leaving deviations out or leaving things out that they're afraid to tell, it makes your job harder because you're trying to adjust stuff that really shouldn't be adjusted because they're just not taking accountability.
Yeah, I mean, as coaches, we can only work with what's in front of us. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're omitting things based off of feeling guilty or, thinking we won't figure it out, I mean, at some point we'll figure it out. It's, the amount of people who are actually like hard prep cases is very, 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 very small. So if all things are being followed, then everything should move in synchronicity forward. So, but yeah, you gave a coach multiple shots, and a lot of people may think, second place, blame the coach, let me go try someone else and that will take me. And it's like, what most people don't realize is like, you actually need to stay with that person because you're right there. You just need to dig a little deeper and work a little harder. You're right there. And I think that's where mental fortitude comes in. And you know, you mentioned stoicism. Like I found that when we were prepping together in 2017, that's when it like I found it in that prep. And then it's just been something that I've built into my life moving forward. And it's been a game changer, especially for bodybuilding. But so walk me through prep season, other than like realizing you can only take on so much work. How did the prep go? Was it smooth? Any hiccups?
Prep went really well. So I always tell people too, people like think I'm like crazy when I tell them my preps we usually start at 30 weeks for my preps, only because my daughter's 4 now, but my body, I don't trust my body enough right now to not to start a prep at like 18 or 20 weeks out. I still feel like even though my daughter, you know, I've had 4 years post pregnancy, there are still some times where I start getting into my preps where I feel like my body isn't responding as quickly as I want. So I always give myself a little bit extra time. So I start my preps at 30 weeks out. The first 10 weeks of that preps usually just the first five, I'll say this, the first 5 weeks is when I get into that prep, my mindset, it just my body gets into adjustment where the mindset switches. I can already feel the water lays coming off. And I don't know if you get like that with your preps, but like my body knows, like it's like a thing that switches. Even though I can follow my off season to a T, when I tell my body, okay, it's prep season, it's my body responds immediately when my mental state connects with it. So I can just feel my training intensify, the water layers start coming off. My body is like, okay, we're ready. So the first 5 weeks of my prep is really getting into that mental state, into the zone. We usually do refeeds or cheat meals for the first 10 weeks of that. So out of the 30 weeks, usually until 20 weeks out, we'll usually do a weekly refeed. And then after that is when the cardio will intensify a little bit, instead of maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Well, you know, depending on how I'm looking. This prep though, I will say, knock on wood, it was by far the easiest prep I've ever had. And it's really weird to say, but I think because I beat my body up so much for the past couple preps, that recovery and spending so much time in my off season with my crucial recovery, and I was very, very routine with my timing of my meals for my off season. I get a little sloppy with my off season timing of my meals. I'll still eat the same, but you know, sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, I have a client for 3 hours, I'll eat after. Where this one, I was like, nope, I'm still gonna eat very time routine. So getting into the prep season, I think that had a lot to do with making my adjustment period a little bit faster going into the prep. And then after that, it was just more of listening to my body and how it responded. This was the one where it was a very easy prep for me. I was on quite a lot of carbs, no fats pretty much right off the bat, but I think most of us are used to the low fats. Cardio never went more than 45 minutes for the last 2 weeks of prep. I was pretty much on 4 days of cardio, 20 minutes a day, fasted for the entire like 18 weeks, 18 to 22 weeks of my prep. It was mind blowing to me at how low cardio I was doing.
You think
Training,
that's because of how active you are with personal training and then the farm?
yeah. Yeah, and that was one too, is I used to wear one of those watches that would tell me how many steps, but I mean, on average, if I'm training in a gym all day, it's usually 15 to 20,000 steps just alone, you know, of working out, not including my NEAT and not including my actual cardio. Um, and then there was a lot of times too where like I want to push the intensity of my workouts, my body's not feeling it, and I would reach out to my coach and be like, listen, my body feels off today. I'm gonna pull back a little bit, and that was really hard for me to do because I'm one of those where I want to push through the pain, push through the intensity. But I think doing that, and I think I had 6 times this entire prep where I was like, I cannot train today. My body is telling me no, and I think that really helped because in the past preps I would just push through it, and then I would find out I'd be sick or I was injured. And knock on wood, I had no sicknesses this prep, which usually I get like some sinus infection or cold during the prep. And that was about it. I mean, I think I told you my only obstacle that I had to face basically was pulling back from farm work because I was burning too many calories at the time. And mentally, that was just hard for me because I'm just sitting there like, I want to do something to keep me occupied and I can't.
Yeah, couple points on that, like because I've known you for so long. I think you just have a new perception of what hard is. So because of how hard you've had to work in the past, you were still working hard this prep. You just worked a lot more efficiently, because I felt the same way with my prep. I was like, and it was my best condition by far. So I think when you do this long enough and you accrue enough muscle and you take bodybuilding seriously year round for multiple years in a row, that's it just kind of adds up to where I find that to be the case with a lot of people. Like, Michaela Aycock, for example, comes to mind. She's not doing hours of cardio. We're all doing a base amount of cardio. But I just feel like the more muscle you carry and the longer you bodybuild full time, probably the less cardio you're going to need. And especially with how active you are outside. Now, if you work a desk job, maybe you need more cardio because you're just not moving. But every case is different. And that's where having a good coach who's going to pay attention to those factors comes in. Also, again, like the wisdom and maturity to reckon, like, your body will tell you what to do in prep. And knowing that in the past you would have just grinded it out, worked harder, suffered more. And I had the same mindset when I was, younger too. That's why I liked to prep, because I thought that's all that it was like meant to be, was just like, who can suffer the most. But when we talk about bringing your best look, like listening to your body, taking off days in prep, and that's the biggest thing I have to communicate to younger clients now is like, hey, there's no shame in taking an extra off day in prep. It doesn't mean you're losing ground. You're actually, in your case, you realize like you got better, less inflammation, not getting sick, not running yourself into the ground. So I think it comes with experience and wisdom. It's hard to like, I can tell people that younger than me, but I also have to remember like 6 years ago, if someone tried to tell me that, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to the gym. But it is cool to see, because I have been able to follow a lot of your preps to see the mental shift, because you are extreme. I am extreme. I know how that mindset is. The real power comes when you can control that extreme and use it for you and not as a negative. Because at some points, if you're too extreme and you're just trying to do everything you can to be the best, you're probably taking away from yourself in some aspects. So, walk me through peak week. You get to Pittsburgh. You've done this show 3 years running now. I mean, you can probably drive to Pittsburgh blindfolded at this point. Like, you guys have your system.
Yep.
And your husband. So when did you get in? What was the experience like?
So my mindset too is with now having a farm. I never bring my daughter to my shows. It's too much of a distraction. So I always try to do something that's kind of close enough that if something happens, I'm able to drive home. I purposely try to pick shows I can drive to. I've actually driven all the way to like South Carolina, which was like a 16-hour drive. I don't like flying because with my past medical history, I do really bad with water retention. So if I have to fly to a show, I have to get in probably 9 to 10 days earlier just to get my water off. I hold so much water. So the show was on Friday. I actually got in like late Wednesday night. We drove in. It's a 5-hour drive on Turnpike, no traffic, super easy. This is the weirdest thing for me. So every prep, all the way up until this prep, we have anywhere from a 4-day to I've had up to a 14-day water pulling protocol that I've had to follow because I typically hold so much water. So I'm waiting. Peak week comes around. I'm, reaching out to my coach. We have a game plan of my food. We don't really carb load or fat load. I'm following the same diet all the way up until Wednesday morning. My coach is like, nope, you don't change anything yet. Wednesday morning, I'm packing up, I'm heading out. I sent him pictures. He's like, okay, we're going to start filling you out a little bit with carbs. We don't touch water. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll trust you. I'm going to have a drive. I'm going to drink a shit ton of water while I'm driving. So I'll probably flush it out. Get to the hotel on Wednesday night, take pictures. And I mean, I am dry. Like I'm shocked. And there's nothing, there's no diuretics. There's nothing pulling. We didn't adjust water. And coach is like, okay. He's like, let's add a little bit more carbs. So we add a little bit more carbs. We still are not really adding fat in. Then it comes the day before the show. I actually meet with my coach in person. No, we're not touching the water. He's like, I don't want to touch the water at all. I'm like, okay. Or do you want me to take any Lasix? Nope, you're not touching anything. So we have a little bit more carbs. And I mean, I'm telling you, incremental. I think we did maybe like, I think I had like one English muffin, and the English muffins I make have probably 24 grams of carbs in them. So he's like, have an English muffin for this meal, okay? Next meal, no English muffin, just protein. It was very like hour by hour. This was the most intense like peak protocol because it wasn't like we didn't have a game plan. It was more like, let's see how your body responds. And I don't know if it was just because I wasn't stressed and I was a lot more calm. I just kind of was like, I literally went into this North Americans. Like, obviously, I wanted that pro card, but I went in no expectations. I was like, I'm not going to get my heart broken again. I'm not going in with expectations. I'm just doing everything that I possibly can to just say, nope, I'm going to step on stage. And I did everything I possibly could. There was no easy way out. So morning of the show comes, see my coach again, still have not adjusted water. And by this time, I am so dry. And we did not change anything. We didn't even add any fat in. We didn't change carbs. I mean, I'm just sucking down my supplements in the morning with like my normal water dry, like thinking to myself, oh my gosh, am I have to dry? Am I going to dry swallow these? Like, I'm like, he's like, nope, you're fine. And that was literally it. I stepped on stage with no water protocol, the best hour to hour, just mindfully watching to see how my body responded to food. And I mean, literally, like, my coach was like, okay, like, I think we're almost there. And the minute I stepped on stage, it was like instant peak, perfect conditioning. All the lines came out. I mean, it was the most refreshing thing to see because I don't see myself on stage. So I'm just going back with the photos and videos that they're seeing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you can see my glute striations and you can see my hamstrings, you can see the tie-ins. And it was amazing to see that that was seen. And in my back of my head, I'm like, how is this possible without me pulling water? Like, because I'm always like holding 10 pounds of water usually. We didn't touch anything. So it was mind blowing to me. And so once I got through prejudging, I center stage split with somebody else. So we didn't know the outcome yet. So we still did the same thing, just monitor hour by hour, didn't know if there was gonna be a rejudge or anything. And so we just played it smart. And I literally just laid in my hotel room with my feet up, didn't touch anything, and that was it.
Yeah. So when you got off stage after prejudging, what were the thoughts running through your mind?
I I don't get nervous when I step on stage. And so when I got on stage, I don't know what it was. I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna showcase. I worked really hard. I feel like it was the most polished physique. I was very proud of the physique I brought. I felt like it was a very polished, it was a brand new look for me because I'm not a purple person. I don't usually wear my hair in a ponytail. I was like, I'm gonna try a whole new look. And I just felt like so myself when I stepped on stage. And I mean, I don't know if you saw any of the photos, but like I was very confident. I had a lot of fun on stage. So regardless of when I stepped off stage, I was so confident. Like I was like, you know what? Regardless, I don't go pro. I was like, they noticed me. I was like, they noticed that I enjoyed myself. I made sure to just, smile and showcase all of my best angles. Mind you, going back, I was practicing my transitions and my prejudging routine 4 to 5 times a day, timing myself out to make sure that like I didn't have to worry about, them telling me 10 seconds left. Like I knew exactly what I wanted to showcase. So for me getting off stage, I was just relieved. I was like, I hit out all my poses, I hit all my transitions I needed to do. They didn't have to kick me off stage. I made sure I hit it perfectly. I was professional about it. So going off stage, I was very happy with what I could. I told my coach, I'm like, I was like, regardless of it, I was like, I've never been more proud of what I just brought to the stage and how I presented myself. I felt like I was a very professional at that time to just present myself the way I did.
Yeah. And that, I mean, for competitors and people who are thinking like there's no better feeling than getting off stage knowing that you did everything you could do.
Yep.
There's no better feeling. Like on the flip side, if you get off stage knowing you could have done more or you cut corners in your prep, that will probably haunt you until you do it again and don't make that mistake.
Yep.
Or for the rest of your life if you never get back on stage. So that's why I always urge people to take your prep seriously, not necessarily for the win. The win is with yourself. I mean, it's a competition. Don't get me wrong. Like I want to win every show I do. You want to win every show you do. But at the same time, like there has to be something internally driving you to keep doing all of this. It's not just an external placing or a pro card or a you know, getting posted on Instagram and all the reshares and all that shit, all the attention you get. There has to be something meaningful to you and your human of why you're going to continue to do this year after year after year. So,
yeah, my thing is, I always tell people too, especially like when I do train competitors, if you go into peak week and you are telling yourself, well, what if I would have just taken my cardio more seriously? Or what if I wouldn't have skipped that meal? Or what if I'm like, then you should not be stepping on stage. If you have these what ifs, you did not give it your 100%. You're wasting your time and you're wasting my time because you do not want this. And that's what I always tell people. If you have that where what if, then don't do the show because you did not take it as seriously as you should have.
yeah, no, I always tell my clients, especially my first timers, if the day before the show is like the most chill day of the whole prep, you're just doing tan, check-ins, basic stuff. You're probably not doing cardio. You're definitely not training. It's all just basic run around. You're loading. Should be a really chill, laid back, fun day, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you can reflect on the whole prep and you can decide, yeah, I did everything I could. I think there was no stone left unturned.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow's just business. Well, the chips are going to fall where they may. You can either have a positive reflection based off your effort, or if you do know, you're going to know in your heart of hearts if you cut corners, if you cheated, if you skipped out on cardio or didn't go that hard, if you half-assed your training, you'll know. And you know, whether Instagram knows or your coach knows or your family knows, you have to live with that.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by the win, is knowing that, like, hey, for the last X amount of weeks, I gave every single thing I could to be my best here. That's the win. And then, you build on it from there if you continue bodybuilding. But so prejudging's a wrap, your split center. Obviously, you probably have a lot of people coming at you like, congrats, pro card winner, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think I know the answer, but do you tune that stuff out? You don't really get on social media much, show that.
I do not. That's one thing is people notice, but like I do like social media. It's been a great connection. I mean, obviously it keeps us in touch, but I didn't really take social media like this entire prep, this past prep. I didn't really care if you guys knew what I was doing for my prep or not. It was for me. And like it does become a distraction for preps. And so no, when I got off stage and people were coming at me, I mean, my husband's pretty, he knows my mental state. He'll do this even when I'm at the gym. If someone's talking to me and I really don't want to, she's got to go. She's got to go. So he's almost like my bodyguard where we just literally, I went and saw my coach right after just to touch base and I got out of there. Like I just wanted to go back to the hotel. I don't want to hear anything in my head. I have I still in my head. I presented myself. I was very confident of that, but still no expectations. Do not put false shit in my head because until I have something in my hand that proves that I went pro, I'm still just going and like I gave my best, but whatever. If I'm in the judge's favor that day, great. If not, then it is what it is. So I go right on. I still no social media and yeah, and I just sit there and just watch. Basically, I just rewatch Bob's Burgers reruns. That's pretty much what I do. So that's it. I try to see because I was reading, I don't know what coach did. Someone posted it. I don't know if it was Dynamite D or somebody, but it was posted about how you shouldn't watch reality TV when you're in peak week because it can make your stress levels and your cortisol, especially if you're really into it. So like, I mean, I had my whole like playlist of all my Bob's Burgers episodes. I'm like, all right, this won't get my stress up. So I just watched those and that was it. And the same thing, and I don't know if you're like this too. And that's even wrong. I appreciate my fans and followers, but I don't like when people come to my shows. I don't like to because I feel obligated. I feel obligated that I'm like, oh, you drove all this way. Like, hi, oh, do you want to go to dinner? No, I really don't. The first thing I like to do after the show is I see my husband, I see my coach, and then I want to go and take a shower and get my spray tan off. And then I usually am not even hungry. I just want to drink water and just kind of just like decompress. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm not a foodie person anymore. So I don't really I'm like not super excited to eat food. Like so I just am one of those it's like this is for me. It's not for you. Please don't drive 5 hours to see my show because I'm not going to see you. I don't want to hang out with you. And I don't know if that seems rude or not, but that's kind of how I am. I just don't like people going to my shows because I don't want to feel like another obligation when it's supposed to be about me You know, it sounds, but this is my day, my show about me, and I don't want to have to worry about making, Grandma Jane happy because she came all the way to see me, and now I got to go eat at Macaroni Grill because she made reservations.
Yeah, no, I resonate with that 100%. I'm not a foodie either. So post show, like same thing, shower, blue Powerade, water, and
Yeah,
just time to myself.
yeah,
I'll eat eventually, but the last two contest prep seasons that I've done, 2021 and this year, the post show meal like has been so low on my priority list. It's like
yeah,
hours will pass and I'm like, I guess I should eat. Like
yeah,
I haven't eaten food, and I know the benefit of eating, and like that I need food to like recover. So
yeah,
that's what drives my decision to eat. It's not like, oh, there's this burger down at the local tavern that's 3 patties and all
yeah.
this shit. I'm like, I don't care. Like,
No, I just think about how bad my acid reflux is going to be if I eat something that's not on my plan. I'm like, oh, my body just feels like crap.
exactly. And I just think that's where maturity and wisdom come in. And also like, I don't compete to be able to eat shitty food right away. Like I want to get back to eating the same foods I was already eating, just more of them.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
think
go ahead.
I think that's also one of those too. Is like, and like when I coach competitors, or like I think the first time I did a coach or I did a prep with another coach that I didn't have, I had for the first 5 years of my Bible, I worked with a coach that I literally got a weekly refeed or cheat meal. So like going into a coach where it's like, no, you don't get a weekly cheat meal or refeed. That was, I think, kind of made me a little bit more mature in the sport, realizing that, oh shit, like you're not always gonna get these. And so nowadays, like if I get a cheat meal, it's almost like, well, can I just have extra rice? Like I don't even want to like tell me what to eat. It's not one of those where I'm like going through menus and be like, oh, I want this and this. Like I'm like, what's going to be the most beneficial cheat meal for me that's not going to make me feel like shit for 4 days, but also make sure that I'm getting that glycogen and that also the extra glucose that I need.
Yeah, that's my mindset is that's how I pick is like digestion's number one. I
Yeah.
won't eat a certain food or go to a restaurant if it's gonna affect me because that'll affect my training, that affects my ability to,
Yeah.
that
And
affects my mood.
yeah, and we're both in our 30s, so obviously it's a lot different than looking at when we were in our 20s and where our metabolism, everything was a little bit different. We trained a little bit
Oh yeah.
differently, we ate a little bit differently, but now it's like long-term health and gut health. I mean, think of this.
Yeah.
You and I would not be talking about gut health 7 years ago and be like, hey, like,
No,
now it's a priority. Like it's a priority.
I would go to IHOP. That would be my move. So you're at finals, split prejudging. What is your mindset? You win your class. So this is before the overall. So what's your mindset after you're announced that like Shannon Seeley class winner?
After they announced class winner, I knew I won the overall. I knew right then and there I won the overall. I knew because I saw, and everyone brought in the very great physiques, but I just knew I already had this in my head. It was like if I win the class, my class, I was like I'm going to win the overall. And so even when they had the overall pose down, I've been to enough of these shows where I know that they make it like mysterious, like oh there might be, like they're like what do they say? They're like, oh, Sandy has a surprise for you. And they didn't tell him, like, oh, we're going to do a pose down. They're like, no, we're not going to tell you. So in my head, I'm going through, okay, we're going to do a pose down. What are my strongest poses so I can showcase them? And so I just made sure, like, my most improved poses. So I just went through when we had to do the final pose down for everyone. Force yourself into the center, make sure they see you. And not to toot my horn, but I have very good abs for a women's physique competitor. So that's one of my strongest poses. So I'm like, I'm just going to showcase abs because I looked at all the other competitors that I was going to be posing against. And sure enough, there's a picture of us for the pose down, and there's 4 or 5 of us, and all of them are doing their back poses. And I'm in the center just doing my ab poses right then and there. And I remember them being, okay, winner's chosen, everyone go to the line. And that's when I was just like, well, either they really liked my abs or they liked everyone else's asses and backs before mine. And that's it. That was it.
So you're announced overall winner, North
Mhm.
American's winner. What is the very first thought that's going through your mind as you're walking to the center?
Don't laugh, okay? I hope Walt Whitman gets a really good picture of me.
That's real though. Like that is real.
You know that you are someone when he takes a picture, he is iconic nowadays in the industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't even think I announced it. He posted it on his Instagram before they even announced, I even made a public announcement. And it was just a stunning picture. And I'm like, that was in my head. I'm like, I did it. So when they announced my class winner, I was already a little bit teary-eyed when I won the overall for that class win. And I think it was already in me like, okay, you won the class, you're going to win the overall. So when they announced the overall, I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised. So my reaction wasn't the same as if when I won my class. I was ecstatic. Like, don't get me wrong, I was so ecstatic, but I already had told myself this is yours already. So it wasn't as emotional for me winning my class as it was winning the overall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. Um, so you're walking off stage after the pictures and the trophy. What are the thoughts running through your mind? Because you've done 21 shows, you've done 7 pro qualifiers, you've been bodybuilding for a decade straight.
Yeah.
What are some things going through your mind?
So I literally get off stage and I'm like, shit, what's next? Like I literally am like, what's next? And I get off stage, the NPC does their interview with me, and I go out to the hallway to meet my coach, and my coach is like, I got people texting me, are we doing Legion Fest? What pro show? Are we doing a pro show right now? I'm like, no. I want to go into off season. This was a very long prep for me. I want to enjoy this for a minute and not and just take it all in. And he's like, fair enough. And that was pretty much it. And then the next morning we left and back to life. And it's kind of like that was an amazing day and a moment for me. But I mean, back out in the real world, and when you're not in the community, you're nobody again. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like go to the grocery store, go back to my training. Most people in my gym don't even know what a pro bodybuilder, what IFBB pro is. So it's not something that I can use as like a training tactic to get sales. So it's just kind of like back to my normal, rise and grind and training back and just, knowing I have that title, but I really don't care if anybody else knows I have that title. You know what I mean? It's because the sport is it's for you. It's very selfish for you. And I accomplished what I wanted. And now it's just trying to build a game plan for what's going next.
Yeah. I will point out that you did not change your Instagram to have IFBB Pro in the handle. You have it in your bio, but you kept the same handle that you've had since I met you,
Yeah. There's
10
no
years ago.
reason. Yeah.
So
It was funny because when I did, I got so many messages. Oh, are you going to change your handle? No. What? Why? Why?
yeah,
I mean, most people already thought I was pro 5 years ago, which I don't even care. Like, and so yeah, and I think I changed IFBB Pro like I don't know a week later. Like it's great, but it was myself. I didn't, you know what I mean? It's for, and I think you would pretty much probably do the same thing. It's like this was your personal accomplishment, it was my personal accomplishment that I got through. Um, and yeah, people find out later on. That's great, but at the end of the day, it was my dream
yeah,
and my goal that I accomplished.
yeah. There was something that's one thing about you too that you because you're talking about what's next. Are you doing Legion? People are asking you like you've never, you've had a plan for your contest season, but you've never really, like North Americans 2022, for instance, you got second place. 99% of people are probably going to go do nationals because they're right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't. You've always done that. Like you have a plan and you stick to it, whether you get second, third, last,
Mm-hmm.
like your show
Yeah.
season ends when you intend it to end. So I think a lot of people can learn from that too, of like set your season, set your budget, set your finances, figure out, what your competing is going to look like for each year, and then stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to improve. At the end of the day, most people need more improvements and more size. I think you've had a lot of size for many years already. It's just been about refining and doing some of the intangibles like the posing and the presentation. But that you just brought that up to me because like most people, second place in North Americans, they're doing nationals, whatever 6, 7, 8 weeks later.
Yeah.
So that's even more powerful that you came back to the same show a year later and got the overall.
Yep.
So that was cool. I mean, to go down the pro card run. So At what point in your bodybuilding, you started in 2014, when did you start thinking about, I want to do what it takes to turn pro?
I remember so in 2014 I did my first show and won the overall, which it wasn't a qualifier, it was just a local one at the Redford Theater at the time. And when I did then I won the title of Miss Michigan in 2015. And gosh, mind you, I was so young at the time. So in my head, I win Miss Michigan and I'm like, I'm going pro. This is 2015. So I'm like, I'm gonna do my whole season. I'm gonna do nationals. I'm gonna be the youngest competitor to win pro. And so I start working with our coach that we were working at the time. And I got my ass handed to me. I mean, I was third call outs. I mean, you can't they just gave everyone 16th place after that because there's too many of us. So um so after that, I remember having a really humbling experience where I'm like, oh my, because you're seeing the most seasoned nationals is like the top of the top, the most seasoned competitors. Here I am, a year and a half into bodybuilding, still dabbling with it, not realizing like how far you can go, really realizing like what the sport entails. And I remember getting into with my coach, sitting down with him and going, do you think that I could ever go pro? And I remember him saying, "Yes, you have the mental capacity and the way you train is going to take you far." He's like, "But you have to give it time." He's like, "You cannot expect this to happen overnight." And I just remember it was a really valuable knowledge at the time because when you first start bodybuilding, you can talk to any person who starts bodybuilding, their all goal is to go pro, not realizing, the longevity it's going to take. And so after that, I remember him saying that I wanted that was my end goal, but I didn't have a time frame for it. So I knew in when I got off the stage from nationals and talked to my coach. So 2016 was really when I had that mindset I want to go pro. But from then on out, it wasn't. There was no timeline because I know I had to earn my ranks up with the sport. So I just kept doing national shows every so often to see where I was placing, which was nice because I went from 16th to 9th to 6th. I mean, I slowly moved my way up, but it's one of those things that you have a lot that you're playing with when you're that young in the sport. You don't have the muscle maturity, you don't have the density yet, and so you have those factors you're playing with. You obviously don't have the right supplementation, the quality of supplementation, so there's a lot of factors you play with. So I think in 2016 was when I had that as my long-term goal, but like I said, I didn't have a timeline for it. It was going to be, if it takes me 10 years, it takes me 10 years.
Yeah. And that's the mindset I have long since preached, is like, when someone new comes to me, it's like I almost want to, like, if the goal is to turn pro, if it's just to do a show and like bucket list, cool, like do your show, check that box, get the pictures, and then go on to something else in life. But if it's like, hey, I'm really into bodybuilding, I want to do a show and I want to turn pro eventually, it's like, all right, let's logically look at this. Like, do you have 10 years to give this goal?
Right.
Because that's probably what it's going to take. Maybe a little less if you're better or you get lucky at a certain pro qualifier. But for most of us, especially in the muscular divisions, it's going to take 10 plus years. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Along the way, start of your career to where you're at now, has there ever been a point where you've thought like, I'm done, I don't think I'm going to pack it in?
So when I got pregnant, my husband and I talked about, pardon?
What year was that?
This was in 2019 is when I got pregnant. I had gotten married to my husband the year before. He was prepping for a show while I was pregnant. So after that, we kind of were looking at ourselves financially and we're like, well, we're growing a family. I wanted to go back to school to pursue my master's. And I was just like, well, we talked about it. And during my pregnancy, I mean, I still trained my entire pregnancy. And I kept going back and forth with my husband. I'm like, what, I don't know how my body's gonna respond after I've been bodybuilding for so long. And now, like, how is my body gonna respond post pregnancy? Like, that was my biggest thing, is like, I've seen competitors come out of pregnancy and look phenomenal. And I've seen other ones where it's kind of just like their body doesn't look the same. So in 2019 when I was pregnant, and I mean, you put on weight. So like, I mean, I had cellulite for the first time in my entire life, and that's just part of growing all the, putting on fat in your hips. And so that was kind of an eye opener for me. Um, and so that was when I really thought about hanging up. I was like, how am I going to be able to compete and be a mom, and do this? And, my husband sat me down. He's like, and I've known you longer than I've known my husband. And I remember when my husband and I started dating, he was like, I told him, I was like, bodybuilding is my life. Like, I was like, it is a priority. It goes bodybuilding, then my marriage. And he knew that going on, and people are going to look at me and listen to this and be like, what's wrong with you? But that is literally like, I live for bodybuilding, and then my marriage comes second. And so when I got pregnant, and he told me, he's like, you keep doing your dream. He's like, you gave me my dream of giving me a daughter. He's like, keep going for it. So I had that little tiff when I was pregnant, and then after I got done being pregnant, went right back into it. And I wanted to just step on stage again and see how my body responded. And I personally think the pregnancy helped me. It made me, the way that my body responded after, obviously my hormones were a little out of whack for the first year after pregnancy, but I feel like my body looks better now than it did before I had my daughter. And obviously it comes with the maturity too. And I'm also 10 years older than when I first started bodybuilding, but it played a huge factor into this. And I have to say, I don't want people to listen to be like, wow, she's a shit mom and a shit wife. This is something that we have a very good marriage. I'm a very good mom, but it was one thing that, because I am so invested with bodybuilding, it was something that we had to decide as a husband and wife what I was going to do to take, to pursue this career. And because my preps are so intense, my husband's basically a single dad for 30 weeks out of my prep. And he knows that my prep is my priority. His priority is taking care of my child. That is it. And it can be selfish, but it's a very selfish sport. And I know I'm going to get shit for it, but that is how much bodybuilding is intertwined in my body and my mental state.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you're being candid and open as you are, because it's real, it's raw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you, so it's, I can, everything you're saying, I already know, but it's also, it's not to like paint this picture of yourself like I'm so hardcore, look at me. It's like, this is who I really am. This is what bodybuilding means to me. This is what pursuit means to me. And it just shows that the support system that you have and the bond you have with, your husband. I just watched a documentary about Dorian Yates, and he basically said the same thing, is that, he wasn't an absentee father during his Olympia run to his son, but he wasn't always there mentally, because, he's chasing the Olympia.
Yeah.
And you're not chasing the Olympia at this point in your life, but you're chasing something that's very meaningful to you, that you've put years and years and years of time, finances, your sweat, blood, tear, all of it.
Yeah.
So, I always say, the mindset of a champion is going to look callous from an outsider's perspective, because it won't make sense.
Yeah.
It won't make sense to your family, potentially. It won't make sense to other people who want to have an opinion of your life, but that's what greatness requires in a lot of cases. And it doesn't have to make sense to anybody but you. So if there's anybody who stands with how you approach things and how you are, it's me, because I've, sacrifice. It's a perspective word, because it's like, what is a sacrifice to me might not be a sacrifice to you. You might not be willing to do what I'm willing to do. You might not be willing to bring Tupperware to holidays. You might not be willing to skip family functions. I'm willing to do all that for what I want to achieve in my life. That doesn't make me better. It doesn't make you worse. It doesn't make you better because you won't do that. It's just each person has their own, chemical makeup. So yeah, people are going to, hear what you say and want to make judgments about you, but it's like, that is what it is. At the end of the day, you're just showing who you really are.
Yeah.
Talking to me versus somebody else. It's easy to look inward on a little sentence someone says about their life and say oh, that's a shithead person. I would never be like that. It's like, maybe you don't have anything in your life that's as meaningful as that. Which kind of ties me in, because you've been out there about this since the get. What got you into bodybuilding? I know you had a previous eating disorder.
Yeah. And I was diagnosed with bulimia nervosa at the age of 9. So getting into bodybuilding from having this such erratic eating pattern, I mean, from 9 to basically 19, full on bulimia nervosa, where I'm binging and purging on food upwards of 12 to 13 times a day. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, I'm ingesting 9,000 to 20,000 calories a day and just throwing it up and having that horrible relationship with food, and then transitioning into bodybuilding and learning how to properly fuel my body saved my health. It saved my physical health, it saved my mental health, and it allowed me to build a healthy relationship with food. And I think when people see the full circle here, they realize, like, I cannot be a better person for myself, for my family, for my clients, if I don't have a good mental state on my head. And the only way that I can do that for myself, that I have found, is bodybuilding and the structured eating. If I don't have somebody telling me what to do, and I don't have that control where I can control what I'm eating because my coach told me to, I will relapse and go back into a horrible pattern, which in turn is going to affect me mentally, affect my serotonin levels, all my receptors, and make me extremely depressed and not be the person that I can. And so that's one reason why I always tell people, like, yes, I took one extreme of bulimia into one extreme of bodybuilding, but for me, I took an unhealthy and turned it into something that I feel is healthy for me and my body and my lifestyle. And obviously, some people are going to argue with that, but for me, I would not be alive today if I would have continued down the path of being a bulimic. I mean, I was to the point where I had ulcers all along my esophagus because I was throwing up so much. I mean, and that did also play a huge part in bodybuilding with my water retention, because I abused laxatives and diuretics for so many years with that binging and purging. It took years for my body to just even reset. Now it's at that healthy relationship where even if my coach says I can have a cheat meal, I'm not going to throw it up. I just know I'm just getting the additional food and fuel I need to just benefit my body. And it's been very, very humbling for me to be able to transition to that and realize, hey, I don't need to go to the bathroom and throw up after I eat. And that took a long time. I mean, it's probably been 5 years of active recovery now. I mean, even when I first started bodybuilding, I was still struggling with my eating disorder a lot. And it's really helped me tremendously, just being able to continue this structured lifestyle. I mean, I love it. I don't have to think about what I eat. I don't have to fear food because I know what it's going to do for me.
Yeah. I mean, that is how I view structured eating as well. Obviously, I don't have the background history of bulimia, but I joke with somebody the other day of like, I never have to wonder what I'm going to eat. I just, it's already programmed. You know, I just have to make sure I have all the food prepped, and I do the work of eating those meals. But it's been that way for 10 years. So it's like, you get clients who are like, they give you a sample day's eating, and it's like Starbucks, Halo Top. I might have had some food here, and it's like, that's what structure has given me, is never wondering what's for breakfast, what's for dinner. Oh shit, I haven't eaten today. It's like, nope, just eat on a system. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yep.
So, but you know, I wanted to bring up your history there. Wanted to share with the listeners, but also that's why bodybuilding is so important to you. That's why you put it number one, because it saved your life.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have something like that, then they might not understand it, but at least they could try to understand of like, hey, it was either go all in on this and be obsessed with this extreme, or continue the extreme I was doing and be dead.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that get into bodybuilding and take it to the level of doing it for years and years and years, they probably do have something fucked up about their past that kind of led them into this. I've noticed that, you know, a lot of the conversations I've been able to have on this podcast and just in general is like, you know, some people, the extremes and the negatives and the risks of bodybuilding outweigh what they were doing before bodybuilding. So if that's the case, then those people are going to be all in, because it's like they know where they came from.
Yep.
So since you were thinking about what's next after North Americans, do you have anything you want to put out there? Are you working towards a pro debut?
Coach and I were talking a little bit. I have never had a full year off. My plan is to possibly step on stage the latest, late 2024. We're looking more at 2025. Um, there's some improvements that I want to make, and I always want to, especially with your pro debut, like that is your first stepping out of, getting in the pro league. So it's you make a name for yourself. Usually you can tell within the first, I don't know, five years of a pro, who's really in it for the Olympia qualification or who's just in it to just do it as a hobby. And right now, my goal long term is I do want to qualify and I want to step on the Olympia stage, but it's going to take time and I'm not going to push it. I want to make sure that I get through this health phase with my coach, really improve on the feedback that I still got the judges' feedback from my show. So what they told me, I want to make sure that I really improve on. And so that way, at least when they see me step on stage in 2025 or whenever I do, wow, she really listened. She did exactly what we needed. And just bring it up. And I think too, is just taking that year off and seeing, I'm 31 now, 32, maybe 33 when I step on, how much more is that year and a half off going to give me and make me even look better, which is really purposeful, mindful training, even continue with the recovery, making sure that I have quality supplements, all of that stuff just plays in a part. So in my head, I'm like, I can wait because I want to make sure that when I step on stage, people are like, oh wow, damn, she really improved from North Americans even to her pro debut. I wanna be able to, when people see me every year, damn, she's really improved. She's really grinding hard. And I think that's how you're becoming successful with the sport, is if you're continually improving. If you're stepping on stage every year and there's no growth, there's no improvement, you're clearly not taking it seriously or doing what they told you to do to improve yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love the mindset. I love the approach. I've taken plenty of years away from the stage, so
Yeah.
that's what you have to do to put on muscle. I think, it's the
Yeah.
biggest thing I have to drive home to people is you can't grow if you're in a deficit. It's just not going to happen. You got to be eating food, training hard, resting, recovering. Competition prep is very, very stressful on the human body.
Yeah.
It needs time. And sometimes, a really hard prep needs a lot longer than 6 months or whatever the 7 months. It can handle that for a period, but then there's a period where like, yeah, you do need like 12 to 18 months of no deficits, maybe some quick little mini cuts here and there. But if the goal is putting on muscle, then you do have to get uncomfortable and, being fluffy. And I definitely want to get into that with you more. I know we're probably just over an hour, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but we'll definitely do a part 2 because I do want to talk about your training because for those people that don't follow you, like you train very, very hard and very heavy. And I think a lot of females need to see that because that's what it takes to build the muscle you have is training hard, heavy, intense.
Not booty bands and kickbacks.
No, that's not going to build the muscle. So where can people find you? Anybody you want to plug?
So you definitely can find me on Instagram. It's Shannon Fierce. I have the primary and the backup account. You can find me on the Transcend HRT website. I work with them and Recovery CBD. Those are my top 2 sponsors that really have helped me along the way. That's it right now. I'm pretty quiet every other media outlet right now. I'm trying to keep it. I don't want to expand too much. It's just like find me on Instagram. I try to vicariously post when I'm in the mood to. I really, especially with this next off season, going into it with this health phase, I want to do a lot more training videos because I don't post enough training for the amount of weight I lift and stuff. I always feel like I should probably demonstrate it more, but I don't like to have my phone in the gym when I train. It's one of those things where I'm on airplane mode, listening to music and just everyone leave me alone. So I'm trying to get a little bit better doing that, but it's hard.
Yeah, trust me. It's sometimes the last thing I want to do is prop my phone against a Mutant jug and record my set. But there is value to it when you realize like you have something to give and teach others because you've done this for years. So and on your case, being an influence and role model for females in general, because there still is that large portion of women in America and in the bodybuilding world who just don't understand that, putting on muscle is not going to be a negative, one. And two, if your goal is to excel competitively, you're gonna have to put some weight on the bar and get sweaty.
Mhm.
It's not pretty. So we'll definitely dive into that and do a part 2. But I'm glad we could get you on. I'm glad it worked out the way it did timing wise with you being the overall North Americans winner. That's very cool. So for Shannon Seeley, I'm Tommy Styles. We are out of here.